seat. Hope you guys are all fired up this morning. If you're not fired up, chug your coffee, slap yourself, do whatever it takes. It's going to be a good day. We're finishing up the Happily Even After series today. And next week we're starting a brand new series called This Is Us. We're just going to watch that TV show together for a while. We're not, but I'm a little upset at how excited some of you looked when I said that. We're actually going to talk a little bit about the unique vision that God gives us for what his people, what his church is supposed to be and do in a broken world, and the kind of life and meaning and purpose he wants to unlock and unleash in every single one of our lives. It's going to be awesome. Do not miss it. And don't miss 2 weeks from now, Reach Des Moines. On the 29th, we're canceling our services. We're going to spread out all over the place to serve the city. You can sign up for a serve over the course of the next 2 weeks at the Next Steps table. It's going to be a lot of fun. But this morning, I want to close this series on relationships by talking about something I think we address too infrequently in the church, and it's this: faithful singleness. And I use that term singleness to describe people all along the relational spectrum. Like some people who are happily single by choice and not looking to get married. Some people who are single and looking ahead with the hope of getting married someday. Some people who have a lot of pain in their singleness because it came about as a result of abuse. And some people who are sitting here and at one point in their life they never believed they would be single again, but they're there because a broken relationship fell apart or because a partner died. And I got two disclaimers to make right at the beginning of a message on singleness. First of all, to all the single people out there, which is about 30% of our audience, I realize that I am not the most qualified person to talk about singleness. So if you want to be giving me this look the whole time, that's fine. I totally understand if you're like, oh, great. Mike is going to talk to us about singleness. Maybe next week, Grant and Jeff can tag team a message on parenting for all the people that have kids. What does this idiot know? So I want you to know, disclaimer, I'm self-aware of that, and I'm coming at this really humbly, not from a position of oh, I know everything there is to know about it, but from a position of listening to and learning from single people and listening to and learning from the Bible. I want to approach it theologically because the Bible has a whole lot to say about faithful singleness, and I think it's something every single one of us needs to hear and needs to understand. And second disclaimer to all the married people out there, you do not get to tune me out today. I know what's going through your head. You're like, oh, sweet, this isn't for me. I can take a brain break. No. All the single people who are sitting in here have been sitting in church for all their lives, and they have heard countless messages on marriage and parenting that did not apply to them. It's your turn, okay? It's your turn to be on the other end because they've heard very few messages on singleness. And so I'm going to ask you to do what I ask them to do every time the specific point of the message doesn't apply. Sit here with an open heart and an open mind and trust that the Spirit of God can move. That he's going to do something in our hearts. He's going to stir something up because that's what God does, and that's the power of his word. All right, let's go. I think that finding happiness and meaning and purpose in singleness is important to talk about because the Bible talks about it a lot. And God says that there's a high value in singleness, but you might not know that by looking at the church. We live in a society that places a lot of importance on whether or not a person is married. And in talking to singles, I've discovered that a whole lot of them have come to the conclusion that the church believes the same thing, that being married and having kids is somehow a prerequisite to full participation in the life and the community of the people of God. I think it's difficult and discouraging when at every turn in your life you get the message that you're somehow incomplete and you're missing something. But that's the message that gets delivered time and time again. We live in a society that tends to walk in pairs. Like when's the last time you turned on the radio and you heard, the lines are open now, the 100th caller will receive an all-expense paid trip for one. This is not how we work. It's not what happens. And I think flying solo in a world that's made for two can easily make you feel like a square peg in a society full of round holes. And I want you to understand something. We have an enemy who loves to distort the truth and prey upon our insecurities and tell us lies. So when a single person opens up God's word and it says that in marriage two will become one, he's sitting there ready to whisper in your ear, if God says that 2 equals 1, then he must think that 1 only equals a half. And I don't know what an algebra teacher would say, but that's garbage. That's devil math. That's garbage, and it's not what God says at all. Actually, God says that singleness is a gift. It's a gift. In his letter to the church at Corinth, 1 Corinthians 7, verses 6 and 7, Paul writes this to the church. I say this as a concession, not as a command. I wish that all of you were as I am. And he's talking about being single and unmarried. He said, I wish that all of you were single like I'm single, but each of you has your own gift from God. One has this gift, another has that. I remember when I was a teenager, I had just gotten my first car. It was a year older than me. It was a 1982 Oldsmobile Omega, which was a fine piece of machinery. It had a radio that didn't work at all and like ceiling upholstery that hung down just to the top of my head. It was great. And when Christmas rolled around, the thing that I wanted most for my new car was a stereo that worked, because I thought if I could get a CD player, that will really impress the ladies. And what I excitedly unwrapped on Christmas morning instead was what my parents called a winter car survival kit. It was like a box, and it had some jumper cables in it and a blanket and some tools. And I said thanks, because there's worse things in the world. I put it in my trunk, but I wasn't like super pumped about it. Like, I got to go back to school and tell everybody I got a blanket and some jumper cables. And then I went back to school, and one of my friends had gotten a brand new stereo for his Ford Taurus. And I was a little bit jealous, but fast forward a month. While trying to put a CD in his fancy new CD player, my friend got distracted and hit a patch of ice, and then his Ford Taurus hit a pole. And that same week, I was about an hour away from home because me and a couple buddies went skiing in Illinois, if you can call that skiing. But that's what we were doing, theoretically, and my car died. But I wasn't worried. I smiled, and I ran to my trunk, and I got out my jumper cables, and we jumped that car, and we made it home. I tell that story to point out that the thing he thought would bring him great joy ended up causing him some pain. And the gift that I didn't really want ended up being extremely valuable to me. What we want isn't always what's best. And what we need isn't always what we value. It took love and wisdom for my parents to give me a gift that I didn't value that much at the time, but it was what I needed, and when I needed it, I was profoundly and deeply grateful. The Bible tells us that singleness is a gift. And if we believe that God is good, if we believe that he cares about us and he cares about our situation, if we believe that he gives good gifts, then maybe it is a gift. Maybe it's a gift even if it doesn't feel like a gift. Even if it really, really, really isn't the gift that we want right now. And if you're in that space, like if I'm telling you today that God says it's a gift and it isn't the gift that you want, I want you to remember the old adage about marriage, that marriage is like flies on a screen door. Those on the outside want in, and those on the inside want out. That's a joke. I don't believe that. And if you do believe it, go online, listen to the message on marriage from last week. Change your mind, okay? But single people, I want to honor and encourage you in the relational space you're in today. I want to help us see what God says about it. And there are 4 things I want to say, 4 challenges I want to issue you this morning, and they are not going to form an acrostic like last week. I thought about it, but then I was worried that if anyone's here for the second time, they're going to think we're weirdos who do that every week. I just couldn't do it. So if you don't remember these, you're going to have to write them down today. Challenge number 1, chase Jesus first. Chase Jesus first. First and foremost, as the highest priority in your life, pursue your relationship with Jesus, not your relationship with another person. If you have Bibles with you, you can open them up to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. We've been walking through Song of Songs over the course of this series, and we're gonna jump there in a little bit, but I want to lean heavy on Paul's words in his letter to the church at Corinth. And if you don't have Bibles, the words will be on the screen, and if you need one, steal one from the Next Steps table on your way out. We love it when they disappear. But in verses 32 through 35, this is what Paul writes. He says, I'd like you to be free from concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord, but a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world, how he can please his wife. And his interests are divided. An unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit, but a married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world, how she can please her husband. I am saying this for your own good, not to restrict you, but that you may live in a right way, in undivided devotion to the Lord. This is so cool. Paul's saying that being single is an amazing spot to be in because you have a unique opportunity to have less distractions in the way that you chase Jesus in your life. And I love the way he closes. He says, hey, you guys should stay single. It's better. And I'm not saying that to put restrictions on you. And that phrase that we translate, put restrictions on you, or add restrictions to your life in some translations, is literally in the Greek, put a rope around your neck. Paul's saying, hey, you should stay single. Singleness is a gift. It's an opportunity to pursue Jesus. I'm not saying that to put a rope around your neck. I'm not trying to choke your joy. I'm not trying to choke out your meaning and your purpose. I'm trying to give it to you. Like, this is not some cruel joke where God's sitting up there in heaven like, I'm going to keep that person single longer. Watch this. I'll set it up where like, oh, they're perfect for each other. I'll have them meet on opposite ends of a subway platform. And they'll lock eyes and they'll know right away. But then a train will come and they'll never see each other again. It's like, no, that's not it. God is not playing a cruel joke. It's not like God is keeping you single because he's mad. This isn't to restrict you. It's the exact opposite. It liberates you. It liberates you. And I think the idea behind this is absolutely critical for every single person in this room. I don't care how old you are. I don't care whether you're single or married. We got to get this. It's huge. We live in a society, and sometimes we're part of a church that contributes to this rather than stands against it. We live in a society where we tend to elevate relationships to being the chief aim of mankind. We say that the most important thing about us, the most important thing we can achieve and pursue is a love relationship with another person. We make it the ultimate goal of our lives and the ultimate source of our meaning. And there's this temptation in that for marriage to become an idol. For marriage to become the thing that we worship instead of worshiping Jesus. And it's dangerous because God is the only one fit to sit on the throne of our lives. And when we miss that, when we miss it, when we become convinced that some person or some relationship or some sort of love that we find in another human being is the ultimate goal, what we've done is profoundly misdiagnosed our real need. Because that deep longing that exists inside every single one of us to be fully known and fully loved is a longing for God, and only God can fill it. Augustine said it best 1,600 years ago. He said, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds its rest in you." Marriage is just a picture to help us understand the profound love of God, but we don't need to participate in the picture to understand the picture. And when we treat marriage as the ultimate, instead of treating God as the ultimate, we make some huge mistakes that set us up for failure. First and foremost, we put a lot of pressure on our marriages that they can't handle, or our future marriages that we're looking ahead to. And we dismiss faithful single people as less than or as lacking in some way, shape, or form. And we dishonor the God who made us for himself. God is the goal. God is the goal. Chase Jesus first. Chase Jesus with everything you've got. And be thankful that you're free from the distractions of marriage, at least for now, at least for this season. And I know some of you are sitting here thinking like, okay, chase Jesus first. But can I chase Jesus first and be dating? Is there a way to like chase Jesus first and be married? Yes, but it's more distracting than you know. Okay, chances are if you're single and you're sitting here, you were actually worshiping while we sang those songs and you've actually been listening to the words I said. If you're married and you came here with your spouse and kids, you did close to that, but you missed half the first song because the stupid Wi-Fi doesn't work and it took forever for the labels to print, and then you slapped on your kid, and then your kid didn't want to go in children's ministry, then you finally got in here, and then you started worshiping. But then when you sat down, you remembered you're supposed to be mad at the jerk sitting next to you, and you forgot to be angry at him this morning, so you're like, okay, I'm going to listen to the sermon, but afterwards, I'm going to be so mean to him. He's such an idiot. Okay, so you're like 10%, 20% distracted. That just is. And if you're dating, it's even worse. Okay, you may have paid a little bit of attention, but halfway through the first song, you're thinking like, is he looking at me? Did he look at me? Did he just look at me? Or if you're like sitting near someone you think you might want to be dating, you're thinking if they're looking at you right now, like, how's my hair? Did I cover up that zit good enough? Like, I hope she didn't think I sing too loud. Whoa, her hair smells great. That's guys. Okay, like that's why the Puritans used to separate it. Like guys over here, women over there. It's distracting. It's distracting. So chase Jesus first. Be thankful for the lack of distractions in this season. You're uniquely positioned to do that. Number 2, protect your purity. This is the second challenge. Protect it. It is not easy to do in a world that's continually trying to push you in the other direction. But protect it in the short term and in the long term. It'll pay off. In Song of Songs chapter 8, we spent some time there last week, but right after Solomon's beloved talks about love, she gets this question by some guys who are concerned about protecting the purity of their younger sister. And this is how the conversation goes. See, we have a little sister and her breasts are not yet grown. Super weird, unnecessary way of saying she's young, okay? What shall we do for our sister on the day she's spoken for? If she is a wall, we will build her tower, or we will build towers of silver on her. If she is a door, we will enclose her with panels of cedar. Okay, wall and door, they're not subtle. And this is her response. She says, I am a wall, and my breasts are like towers. Again, unnecessary way of saying I'm a grown woman. She says, thus I have become in his eyes, Solomon's, my husband, like one bringing contentment, peace, shalom, nothing missing, nothing broken. Solomon had a vineyard in Baal Hamon, and he lent out his vineyard to tenants. Each was to bring for its fruit 1,000 shekels of silver. But my own vineyard is mine to give. The 1,000 shekels are for you, Solomon, and 200 are for those who tend its fruit. Okay, without diving too deeply into the supreme awkwardness of the way this concept got communicated right here, these guys say, hey, we got this little sister, and if she wants to honor her purity, we want to honor that. And if she's tempted not to honor her purity, we want to protect that. What do you think? And the answer they get back is yes, that's the right idea. Do that. I protected my purity fiercely when I was young, and I am so grateful for it now. In this season of marriage, I'm so thankful that I was a wall, that I said I'm only going to give myself to my husband because now that's the only one I've given myself to, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful for it. Paul kind of says it another way in 1 Corinthians 7. He says, now for the matters you wrote about, it's good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. But since sexual immorality is occurring, each man should have sexual relations with his own wife and each woman with her own husband. Again, he says singleness is better. But let me be clear. When it comes to sex, put a fence around it, and that fence is called marriage. That's it. That's it. And you guys, I can't imagine how hard it is to be single at any age, whether you're a teenager or you're 80. Like in today's world, in this sex-saturated culture that continually throws sex in front of your face, that continually tries to divorce it from emotion and from love and from commitment and from friendship and say, hey, it's just purely physical, and that tells you that sex is the ultimate goal of life and you should chase it with everything you've got no matter what, and you should always be pursuing it and you should always be going after it, and if you're not, what's wrong with you? It's so hard to stay pure in a world that is like our world is. It just is. But if you want to live happily even after, like happily even after you get married someday, or happily even after as a faithful, singled person, then you got to protect your purity. We got to flee from sexual immorality. Paul tells us not even a hint, not even a little bit, not even a hint, which is the exact opposite message that our culture gives us. Like, oh, a hint? A hint doesn't matter. A hint is fine. Just a little bit, as long as you don't go too far, whatever that even means. But is it? Like, is a hint okay as long as you don't go too far? I want to ask a few questions, and I want everyone to participate. You can all just raise your hands. I'm going to ask some questions, and hit me back with your honest answer, okay? If my wife and kids were going out of town for a weekend, and I said, hey, Jenny, you care if I invite a woman over just for the weekend? Just for some casual sex. Nothing important, just physical. Don't worry about it. What do you think? Okay, now, I want you to raise your hand if you think, you might not even know my wife. You don't have to. You can hazard a guess. I want you to raise your hand if you think she'd be like, yeah, that's cool. Have a good weekend, buddy. Okay, now how many of you think, hey, if I was your wife, I would punch you in the face for asking that? Anyone? Show of hands. Okay, that's a lot of hands. But let me take it a different direction. What if I told her, hey, babe, I'm gonna invite a lady over. We're not gonna go too far. We're not gonna cross the line. Just like right up to it. We're just gonna fool around a little bit. No sex. Like just right up to the line, just for the weekend. How many of you now think she'd be like, oh, well, yeah, as long as you don't go too far, that's fine. How many are voting for punch the face again? Okay, a lot of hands. One more. What if I said, hey, I don't want to cross any physical boundaries that are inappropriate. I just want to invite a woman over for the weekend, and we're just going to snuggle. We'll lay in bed tonight, every night, and we're just snuggle. That's it. Nothing more than snuggling. That'll be fine. How many think she'd be like, oh, well, if it's just snuggling, that's not too far. Okay, how many again would punch me in the face? That seems to be a general consensus in the room on that, and I happen to agree with that consensus. Those were leading questions. I asked them so I could ask this. If that's true, if there's a consensus among us that all of that would be totally out of bounds, and it would be dishonoring my marriage, if that's true, then where should we draw the line when it comes to protecting our purity before marriage? If that's the line when you're married, where's the line before you're married? I'll throw this out there. I think anything that would dishonor your marriage while you're in it probably dishonors your marriage and someone else's future marriage before you're in it. If there's something that you wouldn't do with someone you're not married to while you're married, you probably shouldn't do that something with someone you're not married to before you're married. And I know that is a tall task and a tough ask in this culture. And there's probably not one of us that has gotten it right completely or ever will. I know that it's hard in the world that we're living, but it matters and it makes a difference, and it's what God wants for you. not from you. Protect your purity when you're single. Whether you're searching and hoping not to be single someday, or whether you're content in it, it matters, and it holds the key to God's best future for you. And third challenge, I want to challenge you if you're single, if you're waiting, if you're in that season of looking and hoping someday to be married, I want to challenge you to refuse to settle. Refuse to settle. 1 Corinthians 7:27 and 28 says, "Are you pledged to a woman? Do not seek to be released. Are you free from such a commitment? Do not look for a wife. But if you marry, you have not sinned. And if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. But those who marry will face many troubles in this life, and I want to spare you this." Paul says, if your heart and your mind and your passion are set on getting married, go for it. That's not wrong. There's some real blessing and goodness in that, but don't settle for it. Don't chase after marriage and chase after a relationship because you think that you have to, or you think that you need to, or you think that somehow you're incomplete and insufficient as you are right now. And if you're going to get married, don't settle for it and don't compromise on the who. The who's going to make a difference, and if you get the wrong who because you settled, you're going to have some serious problems. I love the way Solomon says it in Proverbs 25:24. He says, "It is better to live on a corner of the roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife." Every dude in here just nodded, like, well, I've had that thought. I could die if I roll over, but it's better than facing that woman again, right? That's just, Solomon's, it's hyperbole, and I say it in jest, and he did too, but like there's that thought inside of us, it's difficult. But I think there's this real temptation to settle. There is in all of us. To just try talking yourself into the person who's right in front of you rather than waiting for the person who's right. Rather than waiting more and longer, and I don't want to wait anymore, and I'm sick of waiting, and when is this going to happen? Rather than waiting for the person who's best. We have a temptation to settle, and that's a very real temptation whether you're 21 or 61. It just is. To decide you're okay with the person who makes you smile but not laugh, with the person who makes you happy but doesn't make you sing. We have a natural tendency as human beings to be so focused on the immediacy of the present that we make compromises in our future. And it's easy again in this area to listen to the lies of the enemy who's whispering into your brain, your clock is ticking, time is running out. If not now, if not this one, then who? It'll never, ever, ever happen for you. But I want to beg you guys today, please, please, do not sacrifice what you want most for what you want now. Sarah Thabarge is a phenomenal author who's written a couple books, The Forgotten Girls, about Somali refugees, and Well, about her work in a hospital in Togo. And she's also blogged a lot about her experience of singleness and her deep yearning to one day be married. And I want to read you guys something that she wrote, a blog post about refusing to settle. And it's a little bit long, but I think it's incredibly brilliant. It's entitled More, Why I Turned Down the Man of My Dreams. The last time I was in a relationship was the month before I sold everything and set out on this grand 18-month nomadic travel adventure, writing, speaking, and spending 3 months in Togo. The breakup was an amicable ending to a less than serious relationship, and I've continued to be friends with that guy. After that, I measured how long I went without being kissed by weeks, then months. Now it's been more than a year. I don't think I even remember how I told my friend a few weeks ago. It'll come back to you, she assured me. Kissing's just like riding a bicycle. Last week I was staying at a hotel when a very handsome gentleman approached me in the lobby. We started chatting, and then he asked if I'd meet him later for dinner. I said, sure. For 3 magical hours, we sat in a dimly lit restaurant talking about our stories and our families and our occupations. I learned that he was a Marine, spoke fluent French, and was now an investment banker in New York City. He had sophisticated tastes and incredibly good looks. To put it simply, he was my dream man. Except for one thing, he didn't love Jesus. We left the restaurant and took the elevator to the floor our rooms were on. And we got off the elevator, he gave me a kiss and whispered, come back to my room with me. I knew I needed to be immediately decisive, otherwise the offer would seem more and more tempting, and I'd come up with more and more rationalizations for why it wasn't such a bad idea. I want to, but I'm not going to, I said firmly. And he pulled me close to him. Why, he whispered, his lips resting on my ear. He was a good 6 inches taller than me, so I had to stand on my tiptoes to reach his ear. Because, I whispered back, I like you a lot, but I love Jesus more. I kissed him on the cheek, and then I walked away. When I got back to my room, I locked the door, and then I cried. Because sometimes life as a single person, especially a single person who lives on the road, is intensely lonely. And waking up next to someone seems like such a comforting thing. Because I keep praying for God to bring me someone just like that, plus loves Jesus, into my life, and God hasn't, at least not yet. I cried because it would have been so easy and no one would have known. I cried for all the other places in my life where I say I love Jesus more than anything, and yet sometimes the choices I make don't reflect that. I cried for how easy it is to doubt that God's best really is best, and how hard it is sometimes to trust that God doesn't willingly withhold good gifts from us. And if he is withholding something, in my case a husband, it is because he has a plan that's better than mine. And I cried with relief, because I would wake up the following morning with confidence and integrity instead of shame and regret. Then I dried my tears, I made some tea, I took a bath, and then I watched Netflix for a while. Sitting in a hotel room in a bathrobe, watching season 7 of The Office, alone on a Friday, isn't the stuff rom-coms are made of. I don't think Nora Ephron ever wrote a screenplay that ends with the heroine sitting by herself in a half-empty bed, drinking peppermint tea. And as far as I know, the great poets never wrote an ode to the woman who whispered, "I want to, but I'm not going to the man of her dreams. And yet, with each choice that I make, I'm telling a story. And it's not always a glamorous story. It doesn't have nearly as much romance as I'd like. It entails making sacrifices that only God and I know about. It's a hard story to write sometimes, but by God's grace, I hope it's a good one. And if my dreams don't come true, if I never get married, if I never get to write another book, if my name is never up in lights, if my writing doesn't make it to the New York Times list, it'll be enough for me to be known for one simple thing. Sarah Thabarge, the girl who loved Jesus more. I promise you, God's got you. Do not settle. Don't do it. And finally, challenge number 4, embrace the gift. Embrace the gift. If you're single for now or you're single for good, embrace it. Because it's not just a gift to you and it's not just a gift for you. You are a gift to us. You're a gift from God to the church. You can be and you can do things no one else can. You have the space and the margin and the understanding that not everyone else has. And you're uniquely positioned to serve in the community of God's people. And we need you. God says we need you. And I want you to know that God promises, he promises that he sees you right where you are and that there is blessing in it. There's this passage in Isaiah 56 where it says, for this is what the Lord says, to the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths, who choose what pleases me and hold fast to my covenant, to them I will give within my temple and its walls a memorial and a name better than sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that will endure forever. Okay, you could preach a whole series on Isaiah 56, but for the sake of brevity, let me sum up what it means. The word eunuchs in this passage means people who are intentionally single, who choose it. And what God says is, I see you, and if you choose that, if that's what you choose, and you're going to dedicate your life to Jesus, you're going to receive blessings that are even better than the blessings of marriage and children. Because Jesus is going to shine through you, and you're going to make an impact on the world, and you're going to rewrite eternity for the people around you for my sake. You are a blessing, and God sees you. He sees you. And even if it's temporary, and you're looking ahead to a season where you're not single anymore and you're hoping to be married, like embrace the gift for this season. I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in what's next that we miss out on what's now. We spend so much time dreaming about where we want to be that we miss the chance to make a difference for God where we are. Don't miss it. Embrace it. The missionary Jim Elliot once put it like this. I love it. He said, let not our longing slay our appetite for living. Embrace the gift and be the gift right where you are. And married people, let's do a better job. Let's do a better job of appreciating single people, not seeing them and treating them as deficient, as people who must desperately want to get out of the situation they're in ASAP, but seeing them like God sees them, whole and holy people who are a blessing to the community that the church needs. Let's honor them for the space that they're in and for the blessing they are to all of us. And to all of us. As we close this series on relationships today, with the knowledge that each one of our stories is unique. We've all walked our own journeys to get to this point, and we are all over the map relationally, and in different spaces and different situations. But as we close this series, if there's one and only one thing we can take away from this idea and this goal and this aim towards God's vision for happily even after, I pray, my hope is that it's this. We need to put God at the center of every relationship we have. In the end, that's what will matter. In the end, that's what will make the difference. And every day, that's the margin between settling for what our world offers and living out the incredible grand vision of happily even after that God created us for. Like living God's best story from this point forward, the key for every single one of us is to put Jesus at the center of it all. That's the key. And whatever happens next, like from this series forward, in our lives, in our careers, in our families, in our friendships, in our romantic relationships, in our relationships with one another as Revision Church, the deepest prayer of my heart is the world would look at us and say, those are the people who love Jesus more. Will you guys pray with me? Heavenly Father, thank you for who you are. Thank you for your love. Thank you for creating us for yourself. Thank you for being the one who can fill that deep longing, that hole inside every one of us that desperately longs to be fully known and fully loved. God, let all of us, wherever we're at, wherever we've been, let all of us catch your big vision for your best for us and for the future and not settle. Not settle for less than, and not settle for temptation, and not settle for the garbage that this world offers us. When hope and love and freedom are real and they're found in you, let us be the people who loved Jesus more. Be at the center of all of it. Thank you for dying to save us so that love and that relationship could be real. In Jesus' name, amen.